You have been calling yourself weak for too long. You say you are lazy. You say you have no discipline. You say something is wrong with you because you care but still cannot stay consistent. But that is not the deepest truth. The hidden enemy is not simply weakness. It is the habit of trying to control your mind with the mind alone, while your body, your nervous system, your sleep, your focus, and your daily structure are all working against you. In this audiobook, we are going to break that pattern down clearly. You will see why motivation is not enough, why state changes behavior faster than self-talk, and why real control begins with regulation, not shame. This is the shift from self-attack to self-command, from guessing at your problem to understanding the mechanism, from feeling trapped inside every bad day to learning how to return. Stay with me, because this is where the wrong diagnosis ends. Chapter 1. You are not weak. You are using the wrong method. You have been calling yourself weak for too long. You have been using the wrong word for the wrong problem. You say you are lazy. You say you have no discipline. You say you are broken in some private way that other people are not. But that is not the deepest truth. The deeper truth is harder and far more useful. You are trying to control your mind and behavior with the wrong tool. You are trying to force order out of chaos by talking to yourself harder, judging yourself harder, and thinking in tighter circles. That is why you keep losing ground even when you care. That is why you can want better and still do worse. That is why you can promise yourself change at night and break that promise by morning. The problem is not that your desire is fake. The problem is that desire alone is not a steering wheel. You are not living inside a clean machine where thought gives an order and the rest of you obeys. You are living inside chemistry, rhythm, arousal, fatigue, habit, breath, sleep, debt, and repeated behavior. That means your struggle is not only moral, it is mechanical, it is physiological, it is behavioral. And until you accept that you will keep turning every bad day into a verdict on your character, you will keep making the same cruel mistake. You will judge your identity when you should be studying your state. You will say, I am failing again, when the better question is, what state am I in and what is that state pushing me to do? This matters because state changes behavior fast. A tired body thinks differently. A flooded nervous system chooses differently. A sleep-deprived brain reads life differently. A body full of tension does not produce the same mind as a body that has downshifted. A system trapped in overstimulation does not produce the same attention as a system with space in it. So stop turning every struggle into a courtroom. Stop building a case against yourself. Stop acting as if the only explanation for your inconsistency is that you are somehow smaller than the people you admire. That story is making you weaker than the truth ever would. The truth is not soft, but it is clean. You are not powerless. You are undertrained in the right direction. You have been trying to solve a state issue as if it were only a belief issue. You have been trying to solve a nervous system issue as if it were only a motivation issue. You have been trying to solve a behavioral issue as if it were only a personality issue. And when that fails, you attack yourself instead of changing the method. That must end here, because once you diagnose the problem wrong, every solution becomes punishment. Then every plan becomes another stage for disappointment. Then every habit becomes a test of worth. Then every setback becomes proof that you were right to doubt yourself. That is how people sink, not because they do not care, but because they misread the fight. They think the enemy is weakness. Often the enemy is poor state management. They think the answer is more pressure. Often the answer is better regulation. They think they need more self-hate. Often they need a better entry point. You do not build strength by repeating insults in your own head. You do not build control by shaming an overloaded system. You do not build focus by demanding focus from a brain that has been trained by noise screens, panic, and scattered living. First, you must respect the system you are dealing with. Then you must stop asking thought to do the whole job alone. You do not need a prettier slogan. You need a better lever. You need to know that there is a difference between who you are and the state you are currently in. That difference can save your life, because once you see it, you stop worshiping your moods. You stop obeying every wave. You stop believing that every mental storm is a prophecy. A bad state is real, but it is not final. A low state is powerful, but it is not your identity. A fearful state can drag your behavior, but it does not get to define your future unless you keep letting it drive. This is the shift. Read it carefully. You are not condemned to live under every state that visits you. You are not required to become whatever your system feels like in one hard moment. You can intervene. You can train. You can build methods that pull you back. But not if you keep calling yourself weak every time you slip. That label is too lazy for a problem this real. The old story says, try harder. The better story says, use the right tool. The old story says, why am I like this? The better story says, what is happening in me right now and where can I get leverage? The old story says, I need more motivation. The better story says, I need better regulation, better structure, and cleaner behaviors. That is where this book begins. Not with comfort, with correction. Not with excuses, with a sharper diagnosis. You are not weak. You are using the wrong method. Fix the method, then judge the result. Chapter 2. Why the more you try to think your way out, the more trapped you feel. Most people make the same mistake the moment their mind turns against them. They move closer to it. They try to outthink it. They try to reason with panic in the middle of panic. They try to force calm while their system is already running hot. They try to command focus while living inside internal noise. They try to argue themselves into peace. That usually fails. Then it fails again. Then they conclude that they are hopeless. But what if the failure is not proof of weakness? What if it is proof that thought is the wrong first tool in certain states? This is where many people lose years. They do not just struggle. They struggle in the wrong direction. They think more when they need a different point of contact. They add more words to a system that is already drowning in words. Look at what happens at night. Your body is tired, but your mind is racing. You want sleep, so you tell yourself to sleep. You beg your brain to shut off. You replay the same worry from 6 different angles. You try to solve tomorrow from bed. You try to think your way into rest. But the more you grab, the more the fog slips through your hands. That is the trap. Trying to control the mind with the mind can become a loop with no floor. The more you force, the more friction you create. The more friction you create, the more alert your system becomes. The more alert your system becomes, the farther you move from the state you actually want. The same thing happens with fear. You feel resistance. You feel dread. You feel the urge to avoid. Then you start talking to yourself. Come on, stop being scared. This is not a big deal. Just do it. What is wrong with you? Notice what happened. You did not regulate the system. You attacked it. You did not create a path. You created conflict. You did not reduce noise. You added more. This is why so many people confuse intelligence with control. They think that because they can describe their problem, they should be able to think their way out of it. But description is not regulation. Awareness is not intervention. Insight matters, but timing matters too. There are moments for reflection. There are moments for behavior. There are moments for analysis. There are moments for a state shift. If you use the wrong one at the wrong time, you deepen the problem you are trying to solve. You must understand this. Your mind is not always in a condition to lead. Sometimes your mind is the thing spinning. Sometimes your thoughts are not guidance, they are symptoms. Sometimes the sentence in your head is not wisdom. It is just the voice of a dysregulated state trying to explain itself. If you do not understand that, you will believe every thought that appears under pressure. You will think your fear is truth. You will think your exhaustion is identity. You will think your resistance is destiny. That is how people become servants of passing states. They confuse intensity with accuracy. They confuse repetition with truth. They confuse mental noise with revelation. Do not do that. A loud thought is not automatically a wise thought. A repeated thought is not automatically a true thought. A dark thought at midnight is not a reliable map for your life. Learn to be stricter than that. Learn to stop negotiating with every mental storm. Because the harder you try to force clean thinking from inside a chaotic state, the more tangled you usually become. You start checking yourself every minute. You start asking whether you are okay. You start monitoring your own mind like it is a dangerous animal. You become both prisoner and guard. That is no way to live. The goal is not to never think. The goal is to know when thinking is useful and when thinking has become gasoline on the fire. Reflection has a place. Journaling has a place. Therapy has a place. Honest self-examination has a place. But in the middle of activation, rumination is often disguised as problem-solving. It feels productive because it is busy. It feels serious because it is intense. But busy is not the same as effective. Intense is not the same as useful. You do not need more mental wrestling in every moment of distress. You need to know when to stop grabbing smoke. You need to know when to step away from the loop. You need to know when words are no longer helping. Because once you see that limit, you become less afraid of your own mind. You stop demanding that every inner storm be solved by argument. You stop expecting thought to act as judge, doctor, rescuer, and commander all at once. You stop worshiping cognition as if it were your only tool. That is freedom. Not because thought is bad, but because thought is no longer your only move. You have another door. You have another language. You have another way in, and once you use it, you will understand something that changes everything. Sometimes the fastest way to clear the mind is not to attack the mind at all. Chapter 3. When the mind spins out of control, start with the body. When your mind is not where you want it to be, start with the body. Make that a rule, not a suggestion. A rule. Because this is the entry point most people ignore while they keep suffering in circles. They keep trying to climb back into control through thought alone when the better way in is already closer, simpler, and more direct. The body is not beneath the mind. The body is one of the fastest ways to move the mind. Your breath changes chemistry. Your posture changes readiness. Your muscle tension changes your internal signal. Your movement changes your level of activation. Your rhythms change your emotional stability. Your sleep changes your interpretation of reality. These are not motivational slogans. These are practical levers. That means control needs a new definition. Control does not mean you never feel fear. It does not mean you never get flooded. It does not mean your mind never turns dark, loud, restless, scattered, or tired. Control means that when you drift, you know where to put your hands. Control means that when the system is off, you know where the lever is. Control means you do not sit there begging your state to change while doing nothing that would actually help it change. This is why the body matters. You cannot tell your heart to slow down by command. You cannot tell your stomach to digest faster because you feel impatient. You cannot order your whole system into calm through words alone. But you can change the rhythm of your breathing. You can change your environment. You can move your body. You can stop feeding your nervous system endless stimulation. You can create space. You can build conditions. You can interrupt the chain. This is where strength becomes real. Not in fantasy, in method. If your mind is racing before sleep, start with the body. Slow the exit. Extend the exhale. Let the body receive a different signal from the one panic has been sending. If your attention is shattered before work, start with the body. Put the phone away. Sit down. Reduce the noise. Give your system one task, one posture, one place. If you feel like quitting, start with the body. Stand up, walk, breathe. Change your physical state before you let your current mental state write the story of the day. If fear is locking you in place, start with the body. Do not wait for courage to feel clean. Move first. Sometimes action is the first vote against fear. Sometimes behavior has to go first so the mind can catch up later. This is the new frame. Stop asking only, "Why do I feel like this?" Ask, "What state am I in right now and what can I change?" That question is stronger. That question is cleaner. That question creates options. Because once you look at the body, the problem becomes less mystical. You stop acting as if every low state came from nowhere and must disappear by magic. You begin to see patterns. You notice what bad sleep does to your patience. You notice what overstimulation does to your focus. You notice what tension does to your thoughts. You notice what scattered living does to your sense of control. And once you notice patterns, you can train against them. You can build recovery into your day. You can stop treating your body like a machine that must obey endless mental pressure without consequence. You can stop poisoning your focus with constant input. You can stop pretending that deep calm, deep work, and deep resilience will grow in a body you never help. This is not softness. This is discipline at a higher level. Weak discipline screams at itself and then collapses. Strong discipline studies the mechanism and uses the right lever. Weak discipline says, "Be stronger." Strong discipline says, "Change the state, then do the work." Weak discipline waits to feel right. Strong discipline knows how to guide the system back towards steady. That is the path forward, not obsession with your thoughts, not endless self-analysis in the middle of chaos, not moral drama around every setback. You need a working rule you can use under pressure. Here it is. When your mind is not where you want it to be, look to your body. Use the body to shift the mind. Use breathing. Use movement. Use rhythm. Use structure. Use sleep. Use repeated actions that teach your system where to return. This is not a trick for one hard day. This is a new operating method. It is the difference between being trapped inside every state and being able to pull yourself back. And that is the first real victory. Not perfection. Not permanent calm. Not never slipping. The first real victory is knowing that you have a way back. Once you have that, you are no longer living at the mercy of every wave. Once you have that, you stop worshipping moods and start training response. Once you have that, you are no longer weak in the way you once believed. You are a person learning leverage. You are a person building return. You are a person getting the steering wheel back. Start there. Start with the body. Then build the life that follows. Chapter 4. Breath is the emergency switch of the brain. Breath is not a small thing. It is not background noise. It is not some soft extra for people with spare time. It is one of the fastest levers you have when your state starts slipping away from you. When stress rises, when panic builds, when your mind starts running ahead of your body, when your chest tightens, when your thoughts scatter, your breathing changes first. It becomes shallow. It becomes fast. It becomes uneven. And once that pattern takes over, the rest of your system starts reading danger everywhere. This is why so many people stay trapped longer than they need to. They wait for the mind to calm down on its own while the body keeps sending an alarm signal every second. They try to solve a physiological storm with internal speeches. They search for the right sentence while their whole system is still pressing the gas pedal. That is backward. When the state is too high, go to the breath first. Go to the bridge. Go to the one function that sits between automatic and deliberate control. You cannot directly command most of what is happening inside you. You cannot order your heart to feel safe. You cannot lecture your nervous system into trust. But you can change how you breathe. And once you do, you send a new instruction through the whole system. This is why breath matters. It is not motivational. It is mechanical. It is one of the fastest ways to interrupt the chain reaction before it drags the whole day with it. Learn this while it is simple. Use it while it is available. Stop ignoring a tool this direct. One of the most useful patterns is the physiological sigh. 2 inhales through the nose. The first, deep. The second, shorter, stacked on top. Then, 1 long exhale. That long exhale matters. It is the release. It is the downshift. It is the signal that tells the system to stop climbing. You do not need to make it mystical. You need to make it usable. Use it when the email hits hard. Use it when anger rises too fast. Use it before a hard conversation. Use it when you sit down to work and your mind is still carrying 5 other rooms inside it. Use it at night when you feel the spiral starting. You do not need drama. You need a move. This is a move. There is also power in a long exhale by itself. A longer out-breath acts like a brake. Not magic, a brake. And when you are trying to regain the wheel, a brake is not a luxury. It is survival. Most people only think about breathing when they are already drowning in stress. That is too late to build skill. Practice it before the crash. Practice it when you are clear. Practice it when the day is neutral. Then, when the pressure comes, your body already knows the path. That is how real control is built. Not by waiting for chaos, then demanding perfect performance. By rehearsing the return while things are still manageable. Breath does not solve every problem. It does not finish your work. It does not make hard choices disappear. It does not erase fear. But it can lower the internal noise enough for you to act like yourself again. That is the point. Not instant perfection. Functional control. Enough calm to choose. Enough space to stop reacting like a hostage. Enough steadiness to do the next right thing. You do not need to conquer your whole life in one breath. You need to stop the slide. You need to get the wheel back. You need to remember that when the system starts racing, you are not helpless. You have a switch. Use it. Do not wait until your state has already written the next hour for you. Step in early. 2 inhales, 1 long exhale. Take the wheel back. Chapter 5. Turn fear into fuel. Most people have been taught to treat fear like an enemy that must disappear before action begins. That idea destroys momentum. It makes people wait for a clean emotional state that rarely comes. It teaches them to see fear as proof that they should back away. That is a weak reading of a powerful signal. Fear is not always a stop sign. Sometimes fear is energy with no direction yet. Sometimes fear is activation that has not been trained. Sometimes fear is the body telling you that something matters. The problem is not always the presence of fear. The problem is what you do next. If you obey it blindly, it shrinks your life. If you deny it foolishly, it turns into noise. But if you aim it, fear can move you. Fear and motivation are not as far apart as people pretend. Both pull energy into the system. Both narrow attention. Both prepare the body for pursuit. One becomes panic when it has no path. The other becomes drive when it is given one. That is why some people collapse under fear while others use it to move. The difference is not always courage at the start. The difference is direction. Undirected fear floods. Directed fear pushes. Think about how many good actions begin with a form of fear. A person starts training because they are afraid of what their health will become if they keep drifting. A person finally ends a destructive habit because they are afraid of wasting another year. A person starts protecting their focus because they are afraid of becoming shallow, scattered, and easy to control. A person starts speaking honestly because they are afraid of the cost of a life built on avoidance. That fear is not weakness. That fear is information with charge inside it. The mistake is waiting for pretty motivation instead. Waiting to feel inspired. Waiting to feel pure. Waiting to feel ready. Sometimes the honest beginning is less beautiful than that. Sometimes the beginning is, I am afraid of what happens if I keep living like this. Good. Use it. Do not worship fear. Do not live in it. Do not build your whole life around threat. But do not waste it either. Fear can get you off the chair. Fear can force clarity. Fear can break comfort when comfort has turned into decay. There is a kind of fear that keeps you small. There is another kind that wakes you up. Learn the difference. Fear without a target becomes rumination. Fear with a target becomes movement. So give it a target. Name the cost. Name what continues if you do nothing. Name the version of yourself you are becoming through neglect. Name the bill that will come later if you keep choosing ease now. Look at it directly. Not to torture yourself. To get honest enough to move. This is not negative thinking. This is consequence thinking. And many people need it because comfort has made them numb. They do not move because the danger feels far away. They do not change because the price has not been brought close enough yet. Bring it close. See it clearly. If you keep sleeping badly, what happens? If you keep feeding your attention to your phone, what happens? If you keep refusing hard work, hard conversations, hard training, hard change, what happens? Make the cost visible, then move. Fear becomes poison when you sit still inside it. Fear becomes fuel when you turn it into action fast enough. Do one thing. Walk, lift, write, start the block, put the phone away, set the timer, breathe, speak, begin. Action is what tells fear where to go. Action is what turns charge into direction. Action is what keeps fear from rotting into self-attack. You do not need to feel fearless to become effective. You need to become skillful with the energy that arrives under pressure. That is maturity. That is self-leadership. That is what strong people do. They do not always wait for clean skies. They move in ugly weather. They take the energy available and point it at the right target. You can do that too. Stop asking fear to leave before you begin. Ask it a harder question. What are you trying to warn me about, and what action do you demand from me now? Then answer with behavior, not with another speech, not with another delay. Fear has already brought the fuel. Your job is to bring the steering. Chapter 6. Calm does not arrive on its own. It must be created. Calm is not a personality trait. It is not something a lucky few are born with while the rest of the world stays restless forever. Calm is a state. States can be shaped. States can be supported. States can be trained. That matters because many people live with a childish expectation of peace. They run hard all day, flood themselves with stimulation. Carry unfinished thought after unfinished thought. Keep their nervous system lit up late into the night and then get offended when sleep does not come easily. They want the brain to shut down on command after spending 12 hours teaching it to stay activated. That is not how this works. Calm does not appear because you wish for it. It appears when you build conditions that allow it. The same is true for sleep. Sleep is not just a biological event that drops from the ceiling whenever you are tired enough. Sleep is a process supported by skill. It responds to patterns. It responds to preparation. It responds to what you have been doing with your body and mind before you ask it to arrive. This is why people fail when they treat rest like an accident. Rest has to be built. Downshift has to be built. Recovery has to be built. You need tools for that. A long exhale is one of them. It tells the system to slow its pace. It acts like a brake after too much internal speed. Use it at night. Use it after conflict. Use it when your body is home, but your mind is still somewhere else. Yoga Nidra can help. Hypnosis can help. Not because you are broken, because these are structured ways to stop the constant grabbing of thought and guide the system towards stillness. They create a state that is deeply relaxed, less scattered, less tangled, and more ready to enter rest. Many people need that bridge because they do not know how to stop inside. The body lies down, but the mind keeps running laps. The lights are off, but the system is still performing. That is why technique matters. Not as a crutch, as training. The point is not to become dependent on rituals forever. The point is to teach your system how to leave the high gear it has been trapped in. Start thinking about sleep the way you think about work or training. Something to prepare for, something to support, something that improves when approached with intention. That means the evening matters. The last stretch of the day matters. Your stimulation level matters. Your light exposure matters. Your breathing matters. The amount of mental residue you drag into bed matters. Stop acting shocked when a chaotic runway produces a rough landing. Calm needs a runway. Sleep needs a runway. This is not about perfection. It is about respect. Respect for the fact that your system cannot be abused all day and expected to perform beautifully at night. Respect for the fact that a mind under constant attack from noise, speed, and pressure will not simply switch off because the clock says it should. Strong people do not only know how to push, they know how to come down. They know how to recover on purpose. They know that sustainability is built by mastering both directions. You must know how to activate when it is time to move. You must know how to downshift when it is time to restore. If you only know how to go, you will burn. If you only know how to collapse, you will drift. Real control is both. Rise when needed. Come down when needed. Build calm like a craftsman, not like a beggar. Stop waiting to finally feel relaxed. Start creating the conditions that make relaxation possible. Stop hoping sleep will rescue you from the day you just lived. Start preparing for the night you claim you want. Calm is not random. Rest is not random. A regulated life is not random. It is built through repeated behaviors that teach the system where home is. Learn that. Use that. A person who cannot calm down cannot stay strong for long. A person who cannot recover cannot stay disciplined for long. A person who cannot prepare for sleep cannot keep asking the brain for clean work, steady mood, and sharp focus without paying a price. So build the other half of strength. Not just effort. Recovery. Not just activation. Downshift. Not just drive. Calm. Because a life you can sustain is better than a life you can only survive for 3 dramatic days. Chapter 7. Real freedom comes from structure. Freedom is one of the most misunderstood words in modern life. Most people hear it and think of open space, no rules, no schedule, no pressure, no one telling them what to do. They think freedom means waking up and following mood. They think freedom means keeping every option open. They think freedom means not being pinned down by routine. That sounds attractive until you live inside it long enough. Then you see the bill. Too many choices, too many shifts, too many impulses, too many decisions that have to be made from scratch every day. That is not freedom. That is friction. That is chaos dressed as possibility. And chaos is expensive. Every unnecessary choice burns energy. Every unplanned hour invites drift. Every day without structure becomes a day where the loudest urge wins. That is why so many people feel exhausted before they have done anything important. It is not always because they worked too hard. Often it is because they decided too much, reacted too much, switched too much, and left too much open. They lived inside constant negotiation. They kept asking themselves what they felt like doing instead of already knowing what mattered next. That weakens a person. Not because they are lazy, but because chaos taxes the system. You cannot keep treating every hour like a fresh debate and expect your mind to stay sharp. You cannot keep living inside random input, random timing, random effort, random attention, and then wonder why your best work stays inconsistent. Structure is not a prison for strong people. Structure is support for serious people. Structure removes waste. Structure reduces decision fatigue. Structure lowers the amount of bargaining you have to do before action begins. And that is where freedom actually starts. Real freedom is not the freedom to do anything at any moment. Real freedom is having enough order in your day that your mind is not constantly dragged into useless choices. Real freedom is being able to protect your energy for what matters. Real freedom is not having to reinvent your standards every morning. This matters more than people think. Because the brain loves restricted focus more than endless possibility. When the chaos of choice is reduced, the system can lock in. When one path is chosen, attention gets cleaner. Effort gets more direct. Focus gets stronger. You stop leaking strength across 10 directions. You stop living like a person who is always almost beginning. Look at the people who stay stable. They are rarely the people who feel like it more than everyone else. They are the people who do not leave everything up to feeling. They already know when they work. They already know when they train. They already know when the phone goes away. They already know what the first block of the day is for. They do not ask mood to lead. They make mood walk behind structure. That is power, not dramatic power, daily power. The kind that compounds, the kind that looks boring from the outside and becomes freedom on the inside. Because once the basics are decided, your nervous system stops wasting itself on low-level noise. You do not have to think about everything. You do not have to negotiate with every impulse. You do not have to keep proving your intention from the ground up. You just step into the track you already built. That is why structure opens freedom. It does not close it. It opens freedom from confusion, freedom from scattered decision-making, freedom from the endless tax of choosing badly in small moments, freedom from being yanked around by the nearest distraction. The person without structure often feels free for an hour and trapped for a year. The person with structure often feels constrained for a moment and free for a lifetime. Learn that difference. Stop romanticizing disorder. Stop acting like routine is beneath you. Stop pretending that real self-command can be built on vague hope and loose intentions. If your life matters, it deserves rails. If your work matters, it deserves blocks. If your state matters, it deserves design. Structure is not what steals your life. Structure is what stops your life from being stolen by randomness. Put your basics in place. Make the first hour cleaner. Reduce the number of daily debates. Create repeatable rhythms. Protect the things that keep you steady. Then watch what happens. Your energy stops scattering. Your mind stops bargaining so much. Your best actions become easier to reach. That is not less freedom. That is the first real taste of it. Chapter 8. Do not wait for mood. Follow the schedule. Mood is a terrible leader. It changes too fast. It lies too often. It disappears exactly when work becomes uncomfortable. If you build your life around mood, your output will always reflect the weakest part of the day. You will move when you feel bright and stall when you feel friction. You will start strong and vanish early. You will confuse a good emotional morning with character and a hard emotional afternoon with failure. That is no way to build anything real. Mood is weather. Schedule is architecture. Weather changes, architecture holds. This chapter is the spine of action, because this is where many people keep losing the fight. They understand the ideas. They agree with the principles. They feel motivated after reading. Then the next hard day comes and they return to the old question, do I feel like doing it? That question has already cost people years. Stop asking it. Ask a better one. What did I say I would do at this time? That question creates order. That question reduces drama. That question places identity under discipline instead of emotion, because lasting action is not built on inspiration. It is built on repeated blocks that keep showing up whether the emotional sky is clear or ugly. You do not need a perfect system. You need a system that removes excuses. Start simple. A work block, a training block, a sleep runway, a phone-off rule, a walk, a writing block, a thinking block, something real, something visible, something that exists before your feelings arrive. That is what a schedule does. It makes action easier to access because the decision has already been made. It does not eliminate discomfort. It eliminates unnecessary reconsideration. That is a huge difference. Most people are not failing because they cannot act. They are failing because they keep reopening the contract. They promise one thing at night and renegotiate in the morning. They set a plan on Sunday and ignore it by Tuesday. They create rules and then act as if every mood deserves a hearing. No, not every mood gets a vote. If you let every impulse into the meeting, your life will never move in one direction for long enough to produce depth. This is why blocks matter. Forced restriction creates cleaner focus. One task, one block, one lane. 90 minutes of real work can do more for your identity than 7 hours of fake availability. Turn the internet off. Put the phone away. Close the doors you keep pretending are harmless. Restrict your choices on purpose. There is payoff in that. The system settles when it knows what it is supposed to do. Attention sharpens when the menu shrinks. Serious work begins when the exits close. You already know this. You have felt it in moments when you had no room to wander. The question is whether you will build it on purpose instead of waiting for a crisis to do it for you. And let us be honest about what breaks most schedules. Not lack of intelligence, not lack of knowledge, weak protection, loose boundaries, too much openness around the wrong things. One message becomes 10 minutes. One check becomes a derailment. One small deviation becomes the old day all over again. This is why your schedule must be defended, not just written. A calendar by itself is paper. A protected block is behavior. A plan without friction against distraction is a wish. So build friction. Use app blockers. Put the phone in another room. Put it in the car if you have to. Decide the start time in advance. Decide the length in advance. Decide the target in advance. Do not make the block vague. Vagueness is a door for escape. Specificity is a wall. Work later is weak. Write from 8 o'clock to 9:30 with no internet is usable. Exercise sometime is weak. Walk at 6:30 before breakfast is usable. If you want behavior to repeat, make it concrete enough to survive contact with resistance. And resistance will come. Expect it. The first minutes will often feel unpleasant. Good. That does not mean the schedule is wrong. It means you are leaving behind the old reward system that fed on novelty, delay, and ease. There is often a thin wall of discomfort at the start. Push through it. Not forever, just long enough to enter the block. Once you do, something changes. Focus begins to carry itself. Effort becomes less dramatic. The mind stops screaming for alternatives quite as loudly. That is one of the hidden lessons serious people learn. The hardest part is often not the full hour. It is the entry. That is why schedules matter. They get you to the entry more reliably than mood ever will. The second hidden lesson is this: repetition retrains identity. Every time you follow the schedule instead of the feeling, you cast a vote. You tell your nervous system what kind of person is in charge. Not the person who always feels ready, the person who honors the block. Not the person who needs fresh motivation, the person who can begin under tension. That is how confidence is built in the real world. Not by affirmations in a mirror, by evidence, by repeated behavior, by the quiet proof that you can do what you said you would do without waiting for the emotional green light. Stop chasing emotional permission. Build blocks. Protect them. Repeat them. Let the schedule carry you on the days when mood disappears. Because the truth is brutal and clean, the life you want will not be built by the version of you who only acts when it feels beautiful. It will be built by the version of you who keeps the appointment anyway. Chapter 9. Act first. The mind will follow. One of the biggest reasons people quit too early is that they expect internal change to arrive on the same timeline as external effort. They do one hard day and look for a new identity by night. They hold focus for one block and expect their attention to be healed. They sleep better for 2 evenings and expect emotional stability to lock in. Then, when the change does not fully show up yet, they panic. They assume the method is not working. They assume they are different. They assume they need another system, another trick, another reset. No. What they need is patience for delayed adaptation. The body and nervous system learn through repetition. The signal often comes before the result. This is obvious in physical training, but people forget it when the subject becomes life. One workout does not remake your body. One run does not transform your endurance. One walk does not create a new metabolism. But something still happened. A signal was sent. A demand was placed on the system. An instruction was repeated. The body began learning. It may not look dramatic yet, but it is not nothing. That same law applies to focus, sleep, discipline, structure, no-go phone control, and emotional regulation. One clean day matters. Not because it solves everything, but because it teaches the system what direction you are choosing. Repeated enough direction becomes adaptation. Repeated enough adaptation becomes identity. This is why action often has to go first. The mind is slower to trust than effort is to begin. Your feelings may lag behind your behavior for a while. Good. Keep going. Do not demand that your inner state catch up on your preferred schedule. Lead it. There is almost always a thin wall of discomfort at the beginning, a firewall. You feel the drag. You feel the urge to stop. You feel the old self saying, "This is not me," or "This is pointless," or "Nothing is changing." But that wall is not a prophecy. It is a transition cost. It is what it feels like when an old pattern is losing automatic control. Many people turn back right there. They do not fail because nothing is happening. They fail because what is happening is still invisible. They mistake invisibility for absence. Do not make that mistake. The fact that change has not bloomed yet does not mean the roots are not taking hold. Think about the person trying to reduce phone dependence. Day 1 feels awkward. Day 2 feels irritating. Day 3 still feels unnatural. They keep reaching for the device. They keep feeling the pull. They say, "See, I am still like this." Wrong conclusion. The repeated no is already training something. The repeated restriction is already changing something. The no-go circuit gets stronger through use. The impulse does not disappear instantly, but your response begins to shift. Think about sleep. Think about journaling. Think about sitting down for deep work at the same hour. None of these usually bloom after one attempt. They bloom after the system gets enough repetition to stop treating the new behavior like a foreign threat. This is why disciplined people do not panic as fast. They understand lag. They understand that the mind often follows after the body has already been led. They understand that identity often trails behavior for a season. First you act out of intention, then you act out of repetition. Then one day you notice you no longer argue as much. The behavior that once felt forced now feels more natural. The block that once felt heavy now feels expected. The rule that once felt restrictive now feels protective. That is the delayed payoff. That is what people miss when they quit too early. Do not ask every new habit to prove itself in 24 hours. Ask whether you are repeating the right signal long enough for the system to learn. That is the real question. Because if the signal is right and the repetition is there, adaptation tends to come. Not always in a straight line, not always neatly, but it comes. The person who wins is often not the one with the purest mindset at the start. It is the one who can keep acting before the full emotional reward arrives. The one who can move before confidence catches up. The one who can honor the structure before identity feels complete. That is maturity. That is how serious change is built. You go first with behavior, then the mind follows, then identity follows. Then your life begins to look different on the inside and the outside. But only if you do not stop halfway through the invisible stage. So remember this when the work feels thankless. Remember this when the shift still feels small. Remember this when your old self keeps trying to narrate the whole process as failure. Keep sending the signal. Keep entering the block. Keep honoring the schedule. Keep repeating the return. The change you want may be late, but late is not the same as absent. Act first. Let the mind learn after. Chapter 10. Your phone is rewiring your brain. Your phone is not just taking your time. It is training your attention. That is the first truth you need to face. If you refuse to face it, you will keep blaming yourself in vague moral language, while a system of constant stimulation quietly reshapes how you think, how you respond, and what kind of work your brain can still tolerate. This is not only about lost minutes, it is about damaged patterns. It is about reflex. It is about what your nervous system begins to expect from life after enough small hits of novelty speed, scrolling, checking, and social cueing. The phone does not only interrupt your day, it teaches your brain to want interruption. It teaches your hand to reach before your mind has even made a decision. It teaches your attention to live on crumbs. It teaches your inner world to become less tolerant of silence, less capable of depth, and more dependent on external stimulation just to feel normal. That is why so many people sit down to do one meaningful thing and feel restless almost immediately. It is not always because they do not care. It is often because their system has been trained to expect a different rhythm. Fast shift. Quick hit, easy reward, constant input, tiny fragments. That is not focus, that is fragmentation wearing modern clothes. And the bill is heavy. Productivity drops, creativity gets thinner. Relationships get weaker because presence gets weaker. Even rest gets worse because the mind keeps expecting the next tap, the next check, the next refresh, the next little piece of stimulation to carry it forward. This is why the phone must be named clearly, not demonized. Named. It is a tool. It has utility. It can educate, connect, guide, and support. But a useful tool can still become a bad master. And many people are no longer using the phone. They are being used by it. That is the harder truth. If you cannot turn it off for an hour of focused work without feeling agitation, something is already happening. If the phone feels wired into your relationships, your calm, your boredom, your reward, and your identity, something is already happening. If every empty moment gets filled by reaching, checking, or consuming something is already happening. Stop calling this a minor habit. It is a training environment. It is shaping what your nervous system can handle. It is shaping what kind of effort feels possible. It is shaping whether you can stay with one task long enough to produce something real. And if you are a builder, a creator, a writer, a thinker, a serious worker, this matters even more. Because creation requires space. Real work requires space, and space does not appear by accident in a world built to erase it. You have to create it on purpose. You have to tolerate the agitation that comes when the stream is cut off. You have to survive the first minutes of loneliness, frustration, and internal noise without immediately feeding them. That discomfort is not proof that you need the phone. It is proof that your system has been trained to expect it. Good. Now you know what has to be retrained. Do not ask whether the phone is that bad. Ask a more serious question. What is it teaching your mind every day? Is it teaching patience or impulsivity? Is it teaching depth or reactivity? Is it teaching creation or consumption? Is it teaching presence or compulsive checking? Be honest, because the way you answer that question will shape your next move. You do not need to smash the phone in a burst of moral drama. You need a different relationship with it. You need rules. You need distance. You need protected blocks where it has no seat at the table. You need hours where your attention belongs to your work, your body, your mind, or the person in front of you. not to a device that has learned how to nibble at your life in tiny, forgettable bites. Do not underestimate tiny bites. A future can be eaten that way. A mind can be weakened that way. A sharp life can become a scattered one that way. So draw the line. Call the enemy by name. Your phone is not harmless just because everyone else is holding one too. If it trains distraction, it is part of the problem. If it weakens your ability to stay with what matters, it is part of the problem. And if it has been rewiring your attention for years, then your next act of strength is simple and hard at the same time. Create space. Cut the feed. Take your mind back. Chapter 11. If you want to be stronger, train the part of you that says no. Most people think self-control is a personality trait. They think some people were simply born better at resisting better, at staying steady, better at saying no to impulse. That belief makes people passive. It turns discipline into a personality lottery. It lets them explain away their own inconsistency with a sentence that sounds final. I am just not like that. But that is not the right frame. The ability to stop, to hold back, to not act on the first urge is not only a moral quality. It is a capacity that can be trained. A circuit can get stronger. A response can get cleaner. A pause can become more available. This matters because much of modern weakness is not dramatic. It is micro-weakness. The check, the click, the snack, the reach, the reply, the drift, the second tab, the extra scroll, the quick escape from friction. That is where so much of life gets lost now. Not in one giant collapse, but in 1,000 tiny obediences to impulse. So if you want to become stronger, you must train the part of yourself that can say no. Not once in a while. Repeatedly. Deliberately. In small moments that look unimportant until they begin shaping your identity. This is where no-go matters. Not go. No-go. The ability to stop a behavior before it completes. The ability to interrupt a reflex. The ability to leave an urge unanswered. That is power. Because the person who can only do what they feel pulled toward is not free. They are reactive. They are manageable. They are easy to lead by appetite, novelty, anxiety, and cue. Strength begins when the impulse arrives and does not automatically become action. That gap is sacred. That gap is where self-command lives. You build it by using it. Every time you feel the urge to check the phone and do not, you are training something. Every time you want to leave the work block and stay, you are training something. Every time you want the easy reward and choose the harder right thing, you are training something. Do not call those moments too small. They are repetitions. And repetitions build identity. The problem is that people keep waiting for giant tests of character while failing every small test available today. They want to be strong in crisis, but they keep surrendering in ordinary minutes. That is backward. Crisis reveals what ordinary minutes have been rehearsing. If you want to stand firm in bigger moments, you must get serious about the small ones. Train refusal. Train non-response. Train the pause. Train the ability to let discomfort exist without immediately medicating it with stimulation. This is not about becoming rigid for the sake of pride. It is about becoming trustworthy to yourself. Because every time you say no to an impulse that weakens you, you build evidence. You prove that urge is not command. You prove that friction is not fatal. You prove that desire does not get the final vote. That evidence changes a person. It creates inner respect. Not fake confidence, earned confidence, the kind that comes from knowing you can hold the line when something inside you wants to quit, check out, or grab the easy thing. Start simple, delay the check, delay the snack, delay the reaction, delay the purchase, delay the urge to escape a hard block with easy input. Delay it long enough to feel that you are not trapped inside it. Then repeat. The goal is not to become emotionless. The goal is to become less automatic. That is what strong people have. Not a life without urges, but a stronger gate between urge and action. Build that gate. Use it daily, because every no protects a deeper yes. Every no to distraction is a yes to focus. Every no to compulsion is a yes to freedom. Every no to short-term ease is a yes to long-term self-respect. Say no more often, not to life, to weakness, not to possibility, to reflex. Not because you are trying to be harsh, because you are trying to become someone who can be trusted with a real future. Chapter 12. If you want deep focus, you must also learn how to defocus. Many ambitious people make the same mistake. They think more input means more progress, more podcasts, more clips, more notes, more scrolling disguised as learning, more stimulation dressed up as self-improvement. They keep feeding the brain all day and then wonder why real concentration feels thin, forced, and short-lived. But a mind that is always consuming is rarely ready to go deep. A brain that is constantly chewing information does not stay fresh. It stays crowded. Deep focus does not only require effort, it requires clearance. It requires empty space. It requires periods of wordlessness. This is the part many people miss because it does not look productive from the outside. A quiet walk with no audio, a run without more input, sitting still without checking something, looking out the window without turning that moment into consumption, letting the mind drift without immediately filling the gap. These are not wasted moments. They are recovery for attention. They are part of the focus system. They clear the table. They lower the noise floor. They give the brain room to reset its grip. You cannot snack on stimulation all day and still expect meal-level attention on command. It does not work that way. If every break is just a change of screen, that is not real rest. If every pause is filled with more words, more updates, more clips, more social input, that is not defocus. That is continued occupation. And an occupied mind gets weaker at going deep. This is why real focus must be paired with real release. A strong attention system knows how to contract and expand. It knows how to lock in and how to step out. It knows how to work hard and how to stop feeding itself noise. Build your day that way. Have blocks for deep work. Have blocks for real mental offloading. Walk without feeding your brain more content. Move without always attaching sound to it. Create short spaces where your mind is allowed to be quiet, unsettled, bored, drifting unscripted. That is where restoration begins. Not every minute needs language. Not every empty patch needs filling. Not every silence needs rescue. Learn to leave some spaces untouched. That is where deeper focus gets its strength back. Because when attention has not been shredded into tiny pieces all day, it arrives with more force when needed. When the brain is not drowning in constant consumption, it has more capacity to think, create, connect, and solve. So stop believing that relentless input is helping you grow. Sometimes it is only preventing depth. Sometimes the next level of focus is not more effort. It is less clutter, less noise, less feeding, more wordlessness, more room, more real recovery. A mind that can only stay alive through stimulation is not strong. A mind that can be still then go deep is strong. Train that mind. Chapter 13. Sleep is a mental advantage. Most people still treat sleep like leftover time. They work, scroll, react, chase, delay, and push all day, then hand whatever remains to rest, as if the brain should be grateful for scraps. That is a weak model. Sleep is not what you do after everything important is done. Sleep is one of the reasons important things can be done well at all. Your judgment depends on it. Your emotional stability depends on it. Your patience depends on it. Your focus depends on it. Your ability to carry pressure without turning one hard moment into a full collapse depends on it. So why keep treating it like a side issue? Why keep acting surprised when a brain that was overstimulated, under-recovered, and dragged through constant input all day becomes distorted by night and fragile by morning? Sleep is not passive. It is processing. It is maintenance. It is recovery. And one of its most important functions is emotional processing, especially in the second half of the night, when REM sleep becomes more concentrated. That part matters. Why? Because the brain does not only rest there, it works through emotional residue there. It moves through stress there. It softens the sting of what would otherwise stay stuck to you. It helps separate signal from overload. It helps keep small things small. Miss enough of that. And what happens the next day? Small problems feel heavier. Small comments hit harder. Small setbacks feel more personal. Your mind becomes more distorted. Your emotional skin gets thinner. Your tolerance drops. Your perspective shrinks. Then you start reading ordinary life through a system that is still carrying unfinished emotional weight. And because many people do not understand this, they moralize the result. They call themselves weak. They call themselves dramatic. They call themselves unstable. But what if part of the problem is simpler and stricter than that? What if your brain never got the chance to clear the load? What if you are trying to act like a composed adult on a system that has not processed yesterday yet? That is why sleep is a mental advantage, not because it makes life easy, because it keeps life from becoming heavier than it actually is. A well-rested brain does not make you invincible, but it makes you less warped, less reactive, less sticky, less likely to turn friction into catastrophe. This is why you must stop thinking about sleep as mere shutdown. It is strategic recovery. It is emotional sorting. It is one of the hidden foundations of self-regulation. And if you keep sacrificing it, you are not proving toughness. You are weakening your position. You are making the next day harder before it starts. You are asking a distorted system to produce clean judgment. That is a bad bargain, so change the frame. Stop asking, "How little sleep can I get away with?" Ask a better question. What kind of brain do I want to bring into tomorrow? If the answer is calmer, clearer, stronger, less impulsive, more resilient, then sleep has to move up the list. Not someday. Now. That does not mean obsession. It means respect. Respect for the runway into night. Respect for the last hours of the day. Respect for the truth that you cannot overstimulate yourself until the edge of sleep and expect beautiful recovery on command. Build sleep practices instead of fantasies. Prepare for rest before you are destroyed. Downshift earlier, cut the flood. Give the mind less residue to drag into bed. Stop waiting until total exhaustion forces you down. That is not discipline. That is collapse with better branding. Real discipline prepares for recovery before the crash. Real discipline knows that sleep is not stealing time from progress. It is protecting the brain that must make progress tomorrow. And if you still resist that idea, ask yourself something honest. How many personal flaws are really just problems made worse by fatigue? How many emotional storms would shrink if the system were less exhausted? How many bad days are not pure character failure, but a brain carrying too much load with too little restoration? Learn the answer, then act on it. Guard the second half of the night when you can. Stop treating late-night stimulation like harmless entertainment. Stop acting as if rest is for weaker people. It is not. It is for serious people who want a brain that can hold pressure without bending reality every few hours. Sleep well and you do not become soft. You become less distorted. That is a major advantage. Take it seriously. Chapter 14. Write it down to untangle what is inside. A lot of people carry chaos in silence until that chaos starts leaking into everything. It leaks into tone. It leaks into reactions. It leaks into relationships. It leaks into work. It leaks into the way they interpret one hard moment, as if it were a full judgment on their life. Why does that happen? Because what stays trapped inside the head gets to keep changing shape. It gets to stay vague. It gets to stay fast. It gets to feel bigger than it really is. Thought inside the skull can turn into fog, and fog is hard to fight. That is where journaling becomes useful, not as a performance, not as a beautiful ritual, not as some decorative habit for people who want to feel reflective. Journaling matters because it externalizes chaos. It gives shape to what was swirling. It slows down what was racing. It pulls inner noise out where it can be seen, named, and examined. That alone changes a person. Because once the thought is on the page, it is no longer everywhere at once. Once the fear is written down, it loses some of its power. Once the contradiction is visible, it becomes harder to keep obeying it blindly. That is the value, not literary style, distance, clarity, contact. You do not journal because you want to sound profound. You journal because your nervous system and your mind need a place to unload what would otherwise spill into behavior. This is especially important when you are carrying anger, shame, confusion, fear, resentment, or private narratives that keep mutating in your head. When those things remain unexamined, people often project them outward. They blame too fast. They lash out too fast. They grow cold too fast. They read insult where there was only friction. They dump unresolved emotion into the room because they never had a better container for it. Honest writing interrupts that. Honest writing says, put it here first. See it before you spread it. That is mature. That is useful. That is how a person becomes less dangerous to other people and less confusing to themselves. So how should you write simply, directly, truthfully? No one has to read it. In fact, most of the time, no one should. That matters because privacy removes performance. Once you know no one is watching, the language can become real. No posing, no editing to sound wise, no third-person distance. Do not write about yourself as if you are observing a stranger. Write like the truth is finally allowed in the room. What am I feeling? What happened today? What am I afraid of? What story am I repeating? What am I avoiding? What am I angry about? What am I pretending not to know? Those questions matter because they force contact with what is actually there. They move you from vague suffering to named experience, and named experience is easier to work with. You do not always get answers immediately. Good. That is not the only job of journaling. Sometimes the biggest gift is not a solution. It is separation. The page gives you a few inches of space between you and the storm, and those few inches can change everything. They stop the feeling from becoming the whole sky. They stop the thought from becoming law. They stop the day from collapsing under something that was never examined. This is why you should think of journaling less as self-expression and more as internal housekeeping. Dump the noise. Empty the load. Let the mess become visible. Let the contradiction appear. Let the exaggeration expose itself. Let the fear hear itself. Many thoughts lose force the moment they are written honestly, not because they were fake, but because they were never meant to stay unchallenged in the dark. So write regularly. Write when the morning feels cloudy. Write when the night is too loud. Write after conflict. Write when you want to run. Write when the pattern is trying to take over. And remember the rule. Tell the truth on paper before the lie turns into behavior. That is what this tool is for. You cannot direct what you refuse to look at. You cannot untangle what you keep leaving in one hard knot inside your own head. Write it down. Look at it clearly. Let the page hold what your mind keeps fumbling. Then move with more precision than you had before. Chapter 15. You can pull yourself back. By now, the old story should be broken. You were never meant to control your whole life by shouting at your own mind. You were never going to build something stable by waiting for perfect feelings. You were never going to become powerful by confusing shame with discipline or inspiration with structure. That was the old way. It did not work. It exhausted you, then blamed you for the exhaustion. It kept making you think the problem was your character, when the deeper problem was your method. Now you have a different map. You know that state matters. You know the body can shift the mind. You know breathing is a lever. You know fear can become fuel. You know calm must be created. You know structure creates freedom. You know the schedule must lead mood. You know action often goes first and the mind follows later. You know the phone can train distraction. You know no-go must be strengthened. You know deep focus needs real defocus. You know sleep protects the brain from distortion. You know writing can externalize what would otherwise keep running you. So what is left now? Identity. Not as a slogan, as a working truth. You do not need to become the person who never drifts. You do not need to become the person who never gets tired, never gets scared, never gets scattered, never gets hit by stress, never loses rhythm, never slips. That fantasy is weak because it makes one bad day feel like total failure. The real goal is stronger than that. The real goal is to become the person who knows how to return. That is what strength is, not permanent perfection. Return, not never falling off. Return, not always being in control. Return. Think about how much pain came from believing that one bad state meant you had become that state. One exhausted day became I am lazy. One anxious stretch became I am weak. One distracted season became I cannot focus. One collapse became this is just who I am. No, that is the language of someone without a way back. But now you do have a way back. You can breathe and interrupt the climb. You can move your body and shift the state. You can follow structure instead of mood. You can build protected blocks. You can say no to the reflex. You can cut the feed. You can sleep with more respect. You can write the chaos down before it spills outward. You can do the small act that reopens the road. That is not theory. That is equipment. That is what changes identity. Not because it makes life easy, but because it makes you less helpless when life gets hard. So stop measuring yourself by whether you are always at your best. That is childish. Measure yourself by whether you know how to pull yourself back when you are not. That is adulthood. That is self-leadership. That is a person who can be trusted with a longer future. Ask yourself something direct now. When I slip, what is my return path? Is it breath? Is it a sleep setup? Is it a walk? Is it distance from my phone? Is it journaling? Is it a 90-minute block? Is it shutting down the noise? Is it simply starting the next right action before my mind is fully ready? Know your tools. Know your order. Know what gets you back online. Because vague people do not return well. Prepared people do. This is why the book had to move in this sequence. First, the wrong diagnosis had to die. Then you had to learn state. Then structure. Then focus. Then reflection. That sequence matters because it gives you more than motivation. It gives you a repeatable return system. And once you have that, your relationship with yourself changes. You stop seeing yourself as a mystery. You stop acting as if every hard day is proof that nothing worked. You stop crawling back to random inspiration every time your state dips. You stop needing a fresh emotional speech to begin again. Why? Because you already know the road back. You already know that action can restart before feeling fully agrees. You already know that bad states are real but not final. You already know that the system can be guided. This is the new identity claim, and it must be said cleanly. I can drift, but I can return. I can get hit, but I can recover. I can lose rhythm, but I can rebuild rhythm. I can feel fear, but I can still move. I can feel scattered, but I can still narrow my day. I can feel heavy, but I can still use the right lever. That is not empty motivation. That is earned self-respect. And this is where you must be careful. Do not go back to an addiction to inspiration. Do not go back to the old cycle of waiting, then hating yourself, then waiting again. Do not go back to worshiping emotional readiness. Build your life around return, not fantasy. Build your life around tools, not mood. Build your life around design, not panic. You do not need to believe that you will always feel strong. You only need to know that when the system slips, you are not finished. You have a way back. And if you have a way back, then you are already far less weak than you once believed.